Nelson Peltz and the Trian Partners Group brought out white papers, 133 pages telling the Walt Disney Company what they've done wrong and how they can do better. It was a data-intensive piece of masterwork in terms of showing Disney the way forward to a better future. Well, Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company, they have responded. And in doing so, folks, they have led us to believe that an absolute catastrophic future awaits the Disney parks. We're not exaggerating. We'll explain right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel. It is a joy as always. Our job here is ever to endeavor explaining entertainment and keeping you ahead of the culture curve. Joining us to do so today, Vash, Sky, and Jonas J. Campbell, both of That Park Place, and Josh, designer and historian. You can find his website down below, as well as social media links. Welcome to you all.
So good to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, we were going to talk about this, which is on my Patreon this morning, and that is that the Walt Disney Company, by the way, you can see off in the distance there, they're building a Marriott. No, it's not a Marriott. It's the Polynesian DVC. It just looks like a Marriott, but or a Holiday Inn. But we were going to show that they have destroyed the pathway that allowed for 30 years military members and their families to cross from Shades of Green, the hotel that hosts them, to the Polynesian so that they could ride the monorail. And as you can see, that is gone now. And it seems to be gone in connection to property owned by the golf course, which is Disney's. Whereas Shades of Green, the military hotel, still has the walkway. Now, SIFTOD, the local government that controls the Walt Disney World Resort, they've said that they want military members and their families to be able to continue enjoying walking across the road, and maybe they'll build a pedestrian bridge. But Disney, they seem to have gone to such lengths as to destroy the pathway. And it's amazing that they would do that. Maybe they enjoy DVC members who will be staying at that Marriott, the Polynesian Tower, more than they enjoy military members. I don't know. But then something happened which took precedent. And that's hard to believe, by the way, because destroying the pathway, in spite of what SIFTOD wants, that will allow military members to enjoy a perk they've had for 30 years. Well, it really takes something to cause us to jettison that story, because that makes me really angry. But this is the kind of story that does just that. And that is that Disney has responded to Nelson Peltz with their own white paper. And Disney had told us previously that they were going to turbocharge the parks. $60 billion over the next 10 years going to the parks. And we had said on this channel that $60 billion was not enough, that would not be able to sustain the parks and fight off competition from Universal Studios, etc. However, for some reason that we cannot even begin to fathom, the Walt Disney Company, in their white paper, somehow managed to reveal that all of this is a bunch of nonsense, and the actual investments in the parks are absolutely, utterly minuscule, to the point that we are now deeply concerned about their continued relevancy once Epic Universe opens. So let's walk through this, and then I'll hand it to a genius panel. Folks, we're talking about the three people on this panel know the parks better than just about anybody else on the planet when it comes to how these things work. Jay Rasulo knows more than us. Okay, we'll grant that. But
obviously,
10-year investment
I hope
plan.
so.
Plan supports investments to create magical new experiences and refresh existing infrastructures. By the way, this comes to us via Scott Gustin, although it's part of the white paper. 70% of the plan is earmarked for capacity expanding investments, allegedly. But let's really look at this. Of the $60 billion in capital allocation, parks and resorts will receive 50%. So once you take out cruise and other and tech and maintenance, you have $30 billion left. Now, let's also remember that the theme parks are not the entirety of parks and resorts.
Correct.
And there are 10 major theme parks, but that's not all the parks. There are also water parks. And also, although the cruise ships go, they take money, those places they dock that Disney may own, those resorts, those seem to be part of parks and resorts as well.
That's a fair
And
point.
when you consider that Bob Iger seems to really like investing in China and in the Chinese parks more than the domestic parks, for some reason we can't quite understand, because it doesn't seem to give back anything to shareholders that we think is concrete or well placed. Guys, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that best case scenario, the domestic parks are getting $150 million a year, which would mean that they have the budget, the turbocharged budget, to pay for maybe a new attraction every 3 or 4 years, which is a downgrade, a significant downgrade in the face of them needing capacity like they have never needed it before. Vash, lay it out for us. How do I come up with those numbers, and do you disagree with them?
No, I don't disagree with you, because it's parks and resorts, right? So you have a number of hotels that are obviously part of this plan that you have to necessarily consider. And if we're talking about the 10 parks that Disney has a stake in, an ownership stake in, well, I mean, just dividing this up using simple math, napkin math, is about $300 million per park. But then, you have to factor in, like we said, those resorts, those places where those cruise ships dock. I would hope that that's part of the 20%, but who knows now with Disney's accounting math right here. So I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of possibility that you get down to a $150 million number right there, which is extraordinary, because if you look at the previous investments over the last 5 years or so, you get to like Rise of Resistance, for example. That's at least probably $350 million, if not more. It's probably more like $400 million plus for that one attraction right there. $500 million for both Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, and Flight of Passage, each one of those right there. So, like you said, I mean, a good, a big new attraction per park over 3 or 4 years span. That's not out of the ordinary, but we have to consider also that they like these immersive lands, right? They like these immersive experiences. They like to build along with these. So we're talking like what, 3 or 4 major lands over that period of time. Is my math correct on this?
Here's what I'm trying to figure out on the math. This doesn't seem supercharged or turbocharged or charged at all. This seems like stopping just about all of the investment going into domestic parks. That's the only way I can see this. This is so little in terms of funding for the parks that it is insane. And it comes at a time they need capacity badly.
If I can just go ahead and jump in here on this, the figure that I often like to bring up is that it cost them in the last year $23.5 billion to run the 10 parks that they actually own on any level. So that's 230
over what period of time, Jonas?
1 year. 1 year.
1 year, yes.
So if we're talking about 10 years of Walt Disney parks and experiences, just experiences now. I know they just call it experiences, even though Bob Iger forgets himself on occasion. That would be $235 billion. So when they say $60 billion, even then we were skeptical that they're actually turbocharging the parks with $600 million a year. So when you whittle that down to definitely not more than $300 million, and then you take out everything for DVC and hotels and all this extra,
which is what they want to invest in. That's what
right.
That's the capacity we're talking about here.
Right, DVC capacity. And if you pay attention to the things that they announce, there's a little bit for rides, and most of the by the way, they're happy to put Fantasy Springs on the white paper that they just released, even though that is not a park that they own. But here we are seeing a lot of DVC things added in. They took the Fort Wilderness cabins out, and now they're replacing them with DVC cabins. May not be the exact site, but here we are. The thing that I'm actually kind of pleased to see on here is tech and maintenance getting a little bit of TLC, because maintenance is the thing that these parks have been lacking. I would like for these things to have all the wheels attached before they turbocharge it, but it sounds like it's not even getting turbocharged.
We also have to factor in inflation. The Associated Builders and Contractors reports that the cost of building materials has increased by 37.7% since 2020. So, taking this out and stretching it over a 10-year time period, I mean, a significant
you somehow
portion
made this
of this
even worse. You somehow made this worse. I didn't think it was possible. You've done it, Vash.
Here's another one that can make it even more worse. The tech and maintenance The part that kind of cynical to me would be, okay, tech and maintenance would be the reservation system and Genie Plus Lightning Lane, that sort of thing.
That's a good point. Josh,
Sure.
I'm specifically interested in your point of view as a Disney Parks historian and a noted Disney Parks historian, because I think you and I agree that that especially the Florida parks have never needed capacity so badly. And so I'm going to tell you what happened yesterday, and then you just take this away and tell us why they need capacity. Yesterday, at any given point, all 4 major theme parks at the Walt Disney World Resort reached capacity. Now, they didn't reach capacity in terms of what I have seen before on a July 4th in the 90s at Magic Kingdom, where it's shoulder to shoulder. They reached capacity in that Disney's own artificial capacity limits were reached, and they stopped allowing people to make their reservations. Part of what is causing that capacity to be reached, and thus Disney stops making money when the capacity is reached. Okay, folks, stops making money. They can't make more money if people can't continue to enter the parks, and they want to. Part of that is because Disney is not investing in new rides that increase the capacity at the parks. And so what happens is, let's take Epcot, for example. Rick Springfield, yesterday at Epcot was the big concert. People were there. The park was flooded with individuals who had absolutely nothing to do except buy festival food and merch. And maybe that's what Disney wants. But it's not a great experience if that's your once every 5 years trip to Disney, is to go and be like, there's nothing to do here except spend more money. Josh? Why do they need to spend on capacity?
Why do they need to spend on capacity?
Why? Yes, why do they need it more than just about any time we can remember?
Well, because there's actual demand for their product, for one thing. I mean, just on a rudimentary level. Also, as I've discussed many times before with my Magic Kingdom economic study that goes over the first 50 years of the park's existence, which is the same exact trend that you'll see at Epcot, that you'll see at the studios, that you'll see at Animal Kingdom to a slightly lesser extent for them, that there has been ever since 1992, there has been a 49% reduction in capacity at the Magic Kingdom.
Okay. So explain that, because the audience was not going to understand how in the world that can be. How can that be, Josh?
Absolutely. So what it is that every single attraction, they've taken attractions completely out, like things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and then replaced it with something that would be lesser, which would be something like Voyage of the Little Mermaid. They have
when you say lesser, you mean that it doesn't have the same throughput of guests.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't have the same throughput, nor does it have the same duration. And that's actually one of the dynamics that most people don't really consider, is that it's not just that Disney actually needs new attractions, it needs new long attractions. The thing that I say, my prescription for that park's specific problem right now is that they really need to have, a boat ride. They need to have an Omnimover and a theater show, all in development immediately. And each one of those needs to be at least 8 to possibly 20 minutes long for each one of those. That's how you actually get the actual capacity for the park. And they all need to be in the C and D ticket range. We're not talking about e-tickets, because e-tickets have a catch-22 associated with them. Even if you had something like Splash Mountain was, I believe, around like 10 to 11 minutes long, which is pretty amazing. If you put out that, then you all also increase the attendance at the park, because everyone wants to ride the new latest thing, and you've also been touting it for years. So that's what you really would need to do, is you need to have a C and D ticket one, and do not publicize them, which, by the way, all of their heads will explode if I actually said that, but that's exactly what you need to do.
You're absolutely right, Josh. They are headline chasers more than anything else. And going through this white paper, which we'll do in a lot more detail, I'm sure, at a later date, possibly on the Pro Show, we'll focus very much on how they're headline chasing as opposed to exposing the truth of the matter.
Absolutely. And that's why this is so nauseating. But it's also amazing to me, because they put this in the white paper as if it's a solid retort to Nelson Peltz. And when we looked at this, we said, "Oh my gosh, they said the quiet part out loud. This thing that we've been saying," and then the very positive Disney blogs, vlogs, and YouTubers out there, was talking about turbocharged. It's turbocharged, baby. Bob Iger's back, and we're looking at this and saying, no. They just came out and said what we've been saying, and it's worse. And so we're sitting at a time when there's less to do in the parks than ever before. The latest study that came out, and it was a very large study, third-party study, found that Disney parks are the biggest ripoff in North America. I mean, can you imagine getting that as your word? And the response from Bob Iger, because I don't think he's going to be around to have to fix this when the parks fall, the response is to raise the prices in 2025 and to reduce investment dramatically, and then call that turbocharging and hope that the headlines will carry that as if it's true. That is the solution as outlined in Disney's own white paper response. Am I wrong, gentlemen? Have I analyzed this, Vash? Have I analyzed this incorrectly in any way?
No, I don't think you have. This is a pivotal time at the Disney parks right now because, especially in Florida, as we know from the Treon white paper, that the Florida property accounts for a third of the operating income for the entire Walt Disney Company itself. This is a pivotal flagship resort property right here, and the fact that they're putting so little money towards these domestic products is highly concerning, especially when you have this competition coming up from Universal in a substantial way. I mean, they're committing $17 billion to their Florida property, the same amount that Disney is dedicating, or at least they're saying they're dedicating towards the entire Florida property. In addition to that, you have an internal strife happening within Imagineering currently right now. So you have, for example, Leslie Iwerks just came out recently and said that they have a problem with mobile phone technology, and that they are competing with mobile phone technology and competing for guest attention, and that's the really discouraging thing, especially when you hear Josh right now talking about how it's like, well, we need omnimovers, we need large capacity attractions, and it's like, yes, I do agree, but they're internally they're suggesting that, well, maybe necessarily like, don't go for the large capacity attractions or the slow moving attractions because that's not as engaging as something like an interactive based attraction or something like Rise of Resistance, for example, something that captivates your audience, captivates your attention. So it's you have this internal dynamic, flowing right now in terms of what's actually being built, who's actually, necessarily supporting these projects, who's impeding these projects. We've heard that management at Walt Disney World, for example, has necessarily, taken the reins necessarily, and is kind of controlling the work output from WDI in this kind of very imposing way. I think, Joshua, you had a really good description about this, where it's like you're having the movie usher necessarily dictate what's going on screen. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And this has been something that's been going on for at least in the last, at least 10 to 13 years now.
Yeah.
Because it used to be that Imagineering would dictate the destiny of every single park and every single destination on the planet. So they would say, okay, yes, we need to have a new horror, kind of creepy based, but nevertheless thrill ride for the studios. So we're going to come up with Tower of Terror. And then they go from there. Well, now they cross over to where they needed additional capacity. They needed something to be going on in the back of what was then Disney MGM Studios. So they decided, they looked at the stunt show, the Lame Motors Action stunt show over at Paris, and they said, oh yeah, well, this would be perfect. This would be perfect for our needs. And Imagineering pushed back on them. It's just like, no, this is not appropriate for your park. And besides, it's not getting the actual draw that it needs to do over in Paris anyway. So we don't really think that this is appropriate for the park. And they're like, no, we don't care. We want you to go ahead and build it because we're the client. Because we're the ushers that are running your theater, and we want to see this happen here, even though they have absolutely zero expertise in order to make any of this happen. Also, it's important to note that the people that are in charge of the parks in a VP or presidential level are politicians. These are not people that know anything about capacities or anything else that would be required to make certain projections and decisions based off of the destiny of the park. Because the person who decided to put Lane Motors Action inside of the studios, that person was already gone before they even broke ground on it. So they don't have any invested interest on that at all. So,
and that may be what Bob Iger is thinking about the parks right now. Jonas, I want to give you the last word. Josh has done a tremendous job. Vash had to step out, folks, due to a scheduling issue, but we were very appreciative of his time, giving us everything he had before he had to go to the next appointment. Jonas, but the reason I want to give you the last word is I want you to specifically talk about the impact on the investor here, because up until this point, you could charge us with taking the point of view of a fan of the parks, right? You could say that it's because we are looking at this from the perspective of a guest who wants to have a better experience, and you can't blame us for that. But investors and the C-suite at Disney, they want something different. They want profit margins. But in my estimation, it seems to me that this is going to be devastating for the future success of the parks. I am curious, do you share that belief? What do you think might be on the horizon if Disney ceases to invest in their domestic parks to this degree?
Well, the domestic parks are, some years they're 75% of all parks income. I don't think that is what it was over the last period here, but for the most part, specifically Florida makes more money than any other resort complex that Disney has access to right now. Definitely more than California, because California is shut down more often for political reasons that the company does not have any control over. When we look at the parks and how much they spend to make these parks operate, again, that $23.5 billion figure that we talk about, Disney makes $9 billion off of that. And for the most part, when Disney Plus is over here sucking up all of the cash reserves of the company, that has to come from somewhere. It's somewhat coming from linear networks, but for the most part, that's been coming from the experiences division. It could come from Hulu, but they're going to destroy Hulu. So if they want a healthy company, they need to make sure that the cash printing machine, as Disney even called it in their own movie, Saving Mr. Banks, they need to make sure that these things last a long time. They're abusing them, and they're going without oil changes. I'm not meaning that literally.
They're subsidizing the Chinese parks with the profits the domestic parks make, and they're not
right. They've made
parks.
A deal with China. I will spare you all the analogy. They've made a deal with China, and they need to honor that deal without suffering the consequences of angering a very powerful political party over there. So they're stuck in some way. I will say, dollar for dollar, they're probably not getting their money's worth on how much they send overseas to pay for something and how much actually goes towards paying for those projects. In
Josh,
the United
I see there's
States,
go ahead.
And I said the same thing to Josh earlier, and I think we're in agreement on it. If they have $300 million or $450 million over 3 years to build stuff, they need to build smaller attractions that are better, smaller, more fun. None of this e-ticket stuff, no virtual queues, just something that makes it fun to go to the park and will suck up people out of the main areas of the park for a little while, and they can have a little bit of fun. Also, maybe fix Carousel of Progress while they're at it.
I think they need more. I'll just tell you guys, I think they need more pathways. They need more actual space so that more guests can be there. While at the same time, I agree.
Now, I'm so curious about that statement, because I go over to a Universal Studios park and everybody's cramped. You can barely get by each other over there, and yet their revenues are going up. So I would like more space at Disney parks because I would like to not be touching everyone as I go through those parks. But
keep in mind, the reason why it looks crowded is because they're not utilizing their queue space.
That's correct. A very good point.
If the queue space is actually being utilized in a way that was done pre-Fast Pass, then you wouldn't have the problem of overcrowding the streets, because everyone would be actually absorbed inside of the attractions.
And I'll give you my quick answer, Jonas, on why I think they need more. Well, I think they need more area for foot traffic because the parks were not designed to handle the higher capacities that they need. And so, just one quick example that everybody can understand. In the last year or so, if you have been on Main Street when the fireworks are over, that many people should not be in that kind of space, all attempting to exit through those portals.
I will agree. Trying to exit Main
you-
Street USA currently, they open the overflows and send you into the backstage areas, which is a
And
travesty of show.
correct. And the reason why that happens is because they made an adjustment in the early 2000s where they used to base the park capacities on how many people that they could actually entertain at a particular time period. So it would be the sum of all of the restaurant capacity plus the
Huge space.
attractions as well. So both of those, that would be the actual capacity for the park. Now it is entirely based off of fire code.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. The one thing that I really wanted to add here is that I've been saying this ever since almost the moment that Bob Chapek took office. And yes, we are still living in Bob Chapek's world, and we are probably, unfortunately, going to be living in Bob Chapek's world for at least the next 2 or 3 years, probably a few decades, if we survive that long. This company has not been investing in any of its brands, in any of its actual IPs, to use that often overused term, for a very, very long time. And the reason why that Wall Street and most investors and even casual observers don't see this as a problem is because of how well the stock price has been doing up until 2020. And the reason why is that Bob Chapek in particular, but also Iger, have been liquidating this brand for a very, very long time. And the important thing to realize here is that and I'm going to quote this from somebody, there's always an opportunity to cut a corner, sacrifice lifestyle quality, and suck it up as we race to grab a little bit more of the market share. But the problem with the race to the bottom is that you might actually win. And
Great.
that is a quote from Seth Godin, which is a marketing genius.
Yes, I agree with that quote.
Now, where the blame goes, whether it's Iger or Chapek, a video for another day. We said we were going to do last word about 10 minutes ago, but folks, the reason we continue is because we love the parks. We really do. We've been accused of being just negative, and we're just an echo chamber of evil who wants to see the parks fail.
I don't hate them. I miss them.
I can't
Correct. Yes.
outdo what you just said, Jonas. We'll stop there. Folks, if you support this sort of a video, consider clicking the like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts and tell us what you miss in the parks and what you would like to see. Please go follow our guests, whether it's That Park Place, the YouTube channel, or whether it's following Josh and all he does as a historian of the Disney parks, a passion of his that we encourage you all to go experience because he does work unlike anyone else. Folks, the Pro Show is coming up later today at noon Eastern. We will dissect in high fidelity every part of that white paper we possibly can from Disney. It is categorically, substantively different than the Trian white paper, and we'll explain how and why. Folks, it's our job to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve, and it's an honor every time you give us the opportunity to do so. So, folks, as we say at the end of all of these, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
What? What? I just I put out a tweet of a fat minority with a booger in her nose, and I said, "This is an empowered woman." And Kocho retweeted it.
You don't have your own X account, do you?
Oh, well, I actually created it a while ago. The greatest troll I've pulled off in a long time. Do you know how many things I've secretly tanked?
Oh, gosh. I hope not. That would make me legally culpable. But, what are you talking about?
Sweet Baby Inc.
Huh?
Yep. I'm the...
Shut up.
I'm the CEO. Yeah, no, seriously, look, this is my profile picture. Everyone's just AI. It's great. I'm so excited to gaslight everyone and see what they're gonna like next because they think it's socially obligated.
Wait. So you're... No way. You're
Yep.
the CEO of Sweet Baby Inc.?
Maybe. But first, you should see the jewelry company I created.
We're gonna get sued. Oh.
It's gonna be good.